Welcome everybody to Braden and Kiwanis. My name is Gilbert Smith, and we're here for a very special luncheon today for the Veterans Appreciation. Braden and Kiwanis has been serving veterans for a long time. We have been supporting children in this county for 99 years, and we're looking forward to a great program. If you would join me in a Kiwanis tradition to sing My Country 'Tis of Thee. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, voice I sing. Land of my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Let me ask Ed Cleveland to come up to give our invocation.
Join me in prayer, will you please? Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have to come together on this beautiful Florida day. And thank you for allowing us together. And thank you for bringing this wonderful group of veterans who have served their country so proudly together for a quick lunch and a moment of appreciation from Braden and Kiwanis. Thank you, Father, for the privilege of being a Kiwanian and for the Braden and Kiwanis Club and what we do for children in this community. We pray, Father, now your blessing upon our time together, upon our speaker, on the food that we have now consumed. We pray, Lord, that you'll bless all of this to our good and to your service. And in Christ's name we'll ask it. Amen.
You may be seated. Thank you for being here. I do have a few announcements I need to go over before we begin our program. This program is also very full, and we've got a lot to cover. I do want to talk about the community service signups we have on PortoBuzz for our members. The Boys and Girls Christmas Tree Sales is Saturday, November 27th, and Sunday, December 5th. The Salvation Army Angel Tree return gifts to the Kiwanis Hall by December 7th. The Salvation Army opportunity for ringing the bell, December 10th and 11th. And the laying of the wreaths for veterans is going to be December 18th. The Kiwanis Club has a holiday party planned for December 14th here at Kiwanis Hall. And there's no meeting November 23rd, the week of Thanksgiving. And we'll have a board meeting on November 17th at noon at Pier 22. I'm now going to turn this over to the chairman of the Kiwanis Veterans Committee, Ed Cleveland.
Thank you, Judge. What an honor it is to stand before you today as a fellow veteran, to welcome you to the Braden and Kiwanis Club's annual Veterans Appreciation Luncheon. One of my biggest fears as we approach this day is that I'll look out from this lectern and see a whole bunch of empty chairs. Ain't happening today, kids. We are really full, and we are proud of the fact that so many of you are here to join us for this day. We will start the program as we should in a program like this by honoring the colors of this country. Kirby Stewart Post 24 Honor Guard. Present the colors. Please remain standing. We are honored to have Lori Cumby, a surviving spouse of a U.S. Navy veteran, who will be singing our national anthem for us.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Honor Guard, retire the colors. Color Guard, ho, ho. Right, hey. Forward, ho. Our thanks to Kirby Stewart Post 24 for their honor guard today. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate your being here. Thank you, and you may be seated. Most of you should have by now enjoyed an amazing meal prepared by Pier 22. These folks, I showed up here at 9:20 this morning to see what needed to be done. And before we move on and do anything else, before these folks disappear, will you please join me in giving Pier 22 staff a round of applause for the effort that they did today. One of the traditions of Bread and Kiwanis is at the beginning of our programs, before we move into the serious parts of the program, is that we render our time and honor to our country and our flag. And I'm going to ask you to stand for just one moment, please, and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and you may be seated. I just want to know if there's anyone else besides me that shed a tear when Lori was doing the national anthem. It always brings a tear to my eye. POWs and MIAs. Well, we come today to honor all of the veterans here. We can never forget those that did not return and are considered as prisoners of war or missing in action. Please pause where you are for just a moment and enjoy a moment of silence in honor of those that did not return. Thank you. We miss those heroes. METV has been a very big part of what we do at Bread and Kiwanis and what they've done over the last several years at our annual Veterans Program. Sadly, during the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, we lost 13 members of this area, this community, and of our armed forces. METV has produced a tribute to those fallen heroes. Let us watch today, thinking about the sacrifice that these young heroes made for freedom. TAPS. It's one of those things that when I'm with the Patriot Guard at the National Cemetery doing a funeral, or watching the 3rd Regiment at the Tomb of the Unknown in Washington doing a wreath laying, and TAPS gets played, the tears again flow. TAPS is a tune that many of us have heard far too many times as we've stood at attention and rendered the appropriate salute at funerals and memorials. As we know, it concludes many military funerals conducted with honors at Arlington National Cemetery and elsewhere in the United States. The tune is also sounded at memorial services in Arlington's Memorial Amphitheater and at grave sites throughout the cemetery. It's regularly played at the American Cemetery in Normandy, France, to commemorate the sacrifice made there and at and around that site by the United States servicemen during World War II, during the Allied effort to liberate Europe from the Nazis. As we think about the 13 that METV just honored, and those that may still be POW and considered missing in action, let us pause to render honors to those with the playing of taps. For those of you that are able, please rise. Thank you, and you may be seated. If you want to turn around, you can see the Pure 22 staff that we thanked with our applause a few minutes ago. Again, thank you for a wonderful service today. We do want to thank the State College of Florida and Dr. Bell, and many thanks to our two buglers, Kevin Tichy, a music major who attended Palmetto High School before going to SEF. He performs in the SEF Symphonic Band and the Pit Orchestra for musicals. Joe Manila is a music major who attended Braden River High School before coming to SCF. He performs in the SCF Symphonic Band, Bradenton Symphony Orchestra, and the Jazz Big Band. Thank you, gentlemen, for your help. A lot of you have some really neat artwork on the tables in front of you. Yeah, Brett Pollock and I didn't draw those. We want to thank Lori Fox Friselli and the kids, the K-Kids, for the cards that you have on your tables. The Braden Kiwanis Club invited, just go ahead and give her a round of applause. We invited a lot of veterans here today to say thank you, but I hope you've noticed that those thank you notes are from a generation that has very little knowledge of what you did to defend freedom. And yet these young children have learned that you, the veterans that we honor here today, deserve to be recognized for that service. Please enjoy these hand-drawn tributes to you and feel free to take yours home with you. Let me speak for just a moment about Jerry Coons. I joined Braden and Kiwanis Club 4 years ago, having been a Kiwanian in both Circle K at Olivet Nazarene University in Bourbonnais, Illinois, and then after college, joining the Kankakee Kiwanis Club, where I got invited to join. You don't get invited to join the club here, except for right now when I invite any of you who want to join this great organization as it comes into its 100th year to come join us. But the Braden Kiwanis Club put me immediately to work in the Veterans Committee with Jerry Coons as the chairman. My second year on that committee, Jerry Coons says, "You're now the chairman." And here I stand before you today. Unfortunately, Jerry Coons is not with us. The man who chaired the Veterans Committee at the Braden Kiwanis Club and is my predecessor has left us and has left a deep void in the Braden Kiwanis Club and surely the Veterans Committee and other veterans organizations, because those of you that got invitations from American Legions or veterans VFW clubs years ago would have gotten those from Jerry Coons, and he made sure that everyone knew about it. When he passed that torch on to me, it was an incredible honor and an eye-opening lesson on all of the work that he did for Braden Kiwanis Club and for veterans throughout Manatee County. Jerry's presence at this club and on this committee and throughout the county is sorely missed, and we miss you, Jerry. We have several VIP guests that are with us today that Jerry used to bring a whole lot more of these guys in, but we're lucky that we have Lee Washington to help us out. Please let me recognize some of our special guests that are here. Brigadier General Jerry Neff, U.S. Army, retired. A man that, if you've been in this county very long, you know very well. Colonel Larry Bussell, United States Air Force, retired, and his spouse Edie. Jerry is an incredible hero, still dealing with the times that he spent after his ejection from an aircraft in the war. What an incredible man, served this county well in the commission for so long. And Jerry, we're so happy you could be with us again today. Colonel Lee Hayworth, U.S. Army, retired, and we'll be hearing from him later as our main speaker. Judge. We introduce him as Colonel now. Later we'll introduce him as Judge. Colonel Gil Rudeman, U.S. Army, retired. And Chief Warrant Officer Don Courtney. And Bob Green, former Vice Chairman of the Manatee County Veterans Council. We are also honored that members of our Manatee County governmental units are here. To have them take time out from, we know the county commission is having a big meeting today, for them to get out early, I'm certain it wasn't just for the lunch, but so that they could come and honor veterans. We're happy. Will the members of our Board of County Commissioners please stand and let us recognize you. And Dr. Bob Hoops is here as well. Dr. Hoops. He's our county administrator. We're happy he can make it also. You know, we sit here inside the city of Bradenton, and we're happy to have some of our members that are members of the city council as well. And we're glad to have Jane Coker here and her husband from the Bradenton City Council. And who else is here from city council? Oh, stand up. Yeah, well, we're glad you're here. Thank you. Across the river is this nice little town that on Veterans Day generally has an incredible parade and show. This year is going to be at the Veterans Memorial Park, but the mayor of the city of Palmetto has joined us, Shirley Goober-Bond. Now, I have been told that there are some members of the Manatee County School Board here as well. If that's just Manatee County School Board, will you please let us recognize you and give you our thanks for being with us. Thank you to the leaders of our government bodies for being here to honor veterans. We are very lucky that on the board of the committee for the Bradenton Kiwanis Club Veterans Committee, and a part of Manatee government as the Veterans Services Officer is Lee Hayworth. Lee, that's who you're introducing. Lee Washington. Lee's going to come and introduce our speaker.
Just can't get my name right. We're working on that. Good afternoon. We're delighted to have Judge Lee Hayworth with us today to talk about his experience in the U.S. Army, which has been both rewarding and exciting. The judge was born and raised in Sarasota, and after graduating from Sarasota High School, Judge Hayworth graduated with both his bachelor's and law degrees from the University of Tennessee, 1967 and 1970, respectively, where he served in the U.S. Army ROTC program, going on to serve in the U.S. Army Reserves. Judge Hayworth began his legal career as an assistant state attorney of the 12th Circuit, where he served for several years before going into private practice. And in 1988, he was elected to the circuit judge, and in 1991, Judge Hayworth's service to the courts was interrupted when he was deployed as a lieutenant colonel of the U.S. Army Reserves in Operation Desert Storm. He is the only sitting judge in the history of the 12th Circuit who has been deployed to war. Judge Hayworth headed the Department of the Army's War Crimes Documentation Center, investigating Iraqi war crimes, and was based in Kuwait. Please join me in welcoming Judge Lee Hayworth to our Veterans Recognition Program.
So when Gilbert called and asked me to speak today, I was a little reluctant. Not because I have a fear of public speaking, just try to shut me up once I get started. No, my unease is because my experience as a veteran does not fairly compare to that of many of you who are here today. I'll just say there are lots of levels of sacrifice. You see, many of the veterans that we honor here today, if you're in the Army or Marines or Air Force, were members of the branch that we describe as combat arms. I was not. I was an Army lawyer, and for most of my military career, a lawyer in the reserves. I was a member of what is described as combat support. Now, the distinctions between combat support and combat arms in our latest conflicts have almost disappeared. But for most of my time in the Army, I served in a peacetime Army. My career spanned the end of Vietnam to 1994. In other words, pre-9/11. So the real heroes to me are the ones who gave the most, who lost their life on the battlefield or who survived and returned, but with visible or invisible combat wounds. Many of you here today came face to face with the enemy, or at least within shooting or artillery range, or engaged the enemy in close quarters. That was not me. The only time I fired my weapon in anger was on the shooting range when I couldn't hit the target. So full disclosure, my contribution does not compare or even come close to the wartime frontline combat experiences of veterans of World War I, Vietnam, enduring Iraqi freedom, or Afghanistan. We all sacrificed and did our part, but some did a lot more. For example, Larry Bussell, Greg Stubbe. I've heard his experiences. I have a good friend, Mike Burns, an attorney in Sarasota who was in Hanoi Hilton with John McCain as a prisoner of war shot down by the Viet Cong. So I know something about their experiences, but of course you can never really understand it if you haven't been through it. So what I'm going to do is start with an apology that I'm not in that group. And especially those of you that served in the sandbox, you deserve our respect. The last 20 years have been nothing but hell. Thank you for that service. So what I'm going to do is share the perspective of a reservist who, after 20 years of training, spent most of his life as a civilian, suddenly received out of the blue an order that changed the trajectory of his life and his family's life. When Iraq invaded Kuwait on August the 2nd, 1990, I had been a circuit judge for less than 2 years, actually 20 months. I was in Reno, Nevada, attending a new judge's course. I'd been a judge advocate in the reserves for 20 years. I was commander of the 199th International Law Team in St. Pete, or as we call it, the nearly 200th. International law is a euphemism for the law of war. Our primary mission was to teach the principles of the Geneva Convention to other reservists. Why did we do this? Well, first, because the U.S. is a signatory to several conventions. Now, I'm going to share a little military history with you throughout this because I happen to like military history. But the first convention was in 1864. It related to the treatment of wounded armies in the field, inspired by a Swiss citizen by the name of Henry Durand. Durand witnessed the atrocities on the battlefield and wrote a best-selling book called A Memory of Solferino. From there, the conventions took off. And most of them were revised after World War II. He actually founded the International Red Cross and was the first recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Another reason that we teach the law of war is My Lai and the part it played in the anti-war movement in the 60s and the disgrace it brought to the U.S. Army and by extension to the nation. The conventions are basically an attempt to embody the principle of the Golden Rule as binding on belligerents in U.S. military. Basically, do unto others. I think you can finish that. It's an attempt to bring some measure of humanity into, quote, civilized warfare. I was in the reserves long enough to witness the military's focus shift from Vietnam to Europe. Many of you, I know, served in that same era. You know, we focused on the Fulda Gap, which is where we war-gamed the Russians were going to invade West Germany. We participated in what we called reforger missions. Then the attention turned to Southwest Asia and the Middle East. So, in our unit, we taught other reservists and sometimes active duty units lawful targeting, humane handling of enemy prisoners of war and civilians, and the rules soldiers themselves should follow when they're captured. In my time, being in the reserves was kind of like being in the play Waiting for Godot. For those of you who are not familiar with Samuel Beckett's play, it's about two guys talking for an hour and a half, and the guy they're waiting for, spoiler alert, never shows. I've seen it twice and it doesn't get any better. Well, for me, Godot finally showed up in the form of a mobilization alert received in December of 1990. I'm going to share with you a very short version of the experience. You know, members of the military would talk about the, quote, balloon going up. Our balloon was tied to a rocket. The expression actually comes from World War I, as I understand it, because when the observation balloons went up, the artillery barrage was soon to follow. On January 14th, Desert Shield ended and UN Security Resolution 678 was authorizing coalition intervention. We were given 10 days' notice to mobilize. My unit was not the Department of the Army's first choice. A Boston unit was. Surprise. They had fudged their reports about readiness and strength, so the mission defaulted to the 199th. We were trained and overstrength. Now, we assumed that our team was going to backfill, meaning fill in for active duty JAG officers who were deployed to the Kuwait Theater of Operations. We would stay stateside, and they would do the really challenging work. But the Army doesn't always tell you what you're going to do. They just say, show up where and when we tell you. The first surprise we got was when we were ordered to Fort Meade, Maryland, outside D.C. Now, Fort Stewart, Georgia, near Savannah, was our mobilization site for 10 years. We were put up in World War II barracks. We didn't even have any cold weather gear because we're from Florida. And while I was there about a day when I received a call from the Judge Advocate General's office requesting my attendance at a meeting at the Pentagon. They sent a staff van and picked me up. I was escorted into a wood-paneled conference room where I sat at the end of a long table. At the other end sat Lieutenant General John Few, the Judge Advocate General, his equivalent, a Navy admiral, and a Marine lawyer, I think, was also a brigadier, and there were other uniformed officers there. I found out later, John Few is a Chinese American. He was married to Connie Chung's sister, which impressed me a lot. Now, I was informed that my unit was to lead the Department of the Army investigation into Iraqi war crimes in Kuwait. We were to leave in about a week. The unit was to be augmented with a contingent of Kuwaiti volunteers who were in the U.S., mostly students, some engineers, and a few women. They were to act as translators and to assist in our investigations. They were also issued BDU's Army camouflage uniforms. In addition, the unit was also to be augmented by a Navy commander and a Marine Corps officer. I was informed that the Army's executive agent for the prosecution and investigation of enemy war crimes, meaning it was primary among all the branches. I was given a wish list. I was to give a wish list of all the materials and supplies that were required, stack them on a pallet, and fly with them to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for transport to Kuwait. At the beginning, the concept as outlined was that we were to function like what we called a U.S. Attorney Strike Team, meaning prosecutors and investigators were to work together to build cases, collect forensics, and identify the members of the Republican Guard who were suspected of committing atrocities. We were to take preliminary steps necessary to prepare the cases for military tribunals, which at the time anticipated war crime trials at the end of hostilities. Of course, we had no idea how long this was going to go on. Now, I had access to some of the charges and specifications used to prosecute Japanese war crimes after World War II. There were about 2,200 of those, and Nuremberg had about 22. And the atrocities being perpetrated by the Imperial Japanese Army seemed more comparable to what the Iraqis were up to. So at Fort Meade, we received renewed training on wearing MOP suits. Those of you not familiar, I had to look it up because I never remembered it. It's military-oriented protective posture. We called them sauna suits. They were to protect us from chemical, biological strikes, and we were issued gas masks and weapons. We had physical exams, and those with a pulse passed. We got our vaccinations and shots, and I remember distinctly the first of 2 anthrax shots, which felt like a wad of tobacco in your butt. One of our female enlisted found out she was pregnant and was not allowed to deploy it. A side note, our unit service pistol was the M1911A1, which fires .45s. Almost all the other reserve units had been issued the 9mm Beretta 92FS. For ammo, we were provided the basic load, which happens to be 3 clips of 7 rounds each. Either they thought we were not really good shots, or they thought that having that many lawyers with firearms was inadvisable. So in the pre-dawn hours in February, we loaded with full packs into an Air Force C-5 at Joint Base Andrews with 1,000 other grunts, loaded on and landed at King Fahd Airport in Daman, near the Bahrain border in the Persian Gulf. That was a good thing, except that we were supposed to be in Riyadh, which was 240 miles away. So we hitched a ride. In Riyadh, I met with Central Command Staff Judge Advocate, a guy by the name of Ray Rubert, a finer lawyer you would not find in any law firm. He was General Schwarzkopf's lawyer, and was informed I was to work directly with him. That gave me considerable juice, which helped when I encountered the inevitable bureaucratic obstacles. While preparing to move to Kuwait, we stayed in Eskan village, a Bedouin enclave with hard walls, converted to a military compound on the outskirts of Riyadh. There, we witnessed the nighttime Iraqi Scud attacks and could see our Patriot missile response, and we just waited for the orders to move out. In the middle of this, I was informed by Colonel Rupert that our mission had changed. Instead of preparing for the prosecutions, we were instead to become the documentarians of Iraqi atrocities. The explanation for this was that our Islamic allies did not want infidels prosecuting Muslims. They said they'd take care of the prosecutions. So at the highest levels, the decision was made, and we pivoted to that new assignment. We set up 3 operations. First, an investigative section in Kuwait City to conduct the field work. Second, incriminating evidence or suspect documents were to go to a collection center in Dhahran, where they would be copied on a high-speed Xerox and the chain of custody preserved. Dhahran is a coastal town on the east coast of Saudi Arabia, close to Bahrain, about 266 miles from Kuwait City. And then the third section was actually in the capital, Riyadh, which would assign to liaison with Saudi government agencies to identify suspects, organize everything, and handle logistical or political challenges. So I, along with the other officers and the Kuwaiti volunteers, formed a convoy in Chevy Suburban supplied by the Saudis, stuffed them with gear, and hit the road for Kuwait City. When we arrived, it was an active combat zone, but it was on the heels of the Army units, and they were securing control of the city. The Iraqis had left for the most part, but there were still isolated pockets of resistance. Kuwait City was under martial law. Checkpoints, Humvees with 50 caliber machine guns were set up at intersections, and there was intermittent automatic weapons fire. You might recall this was at the time when the oil fields were burning, and you couldn't see your hand in front of you at noon. It was terrible for breathing, and it presented operational problems. But we overcame all that. The Army had set up a secure military enclave on the outskirts of Kuwait City called Camp Freedom, but we were authorized to set up operations in the city center, so we moved into Kuwait Home and conducted investigations out of an abandoned Iraqi headquarters. With our Kuwaiti volunteers, we canvassed neighborhoods to investigate reports being received from locals concerning atrocities. We had to be very careful with the female sexual assault victims. It's a cultural thing there, very terrifying for them to even talk to about it. And they were not very forthcoming, so we had to use our women volunteers to try to get their stories out, and some of them did come through with some very horrific stories. With the help of the MPs who guarded the prisoners, we started researching enemy prisoner of war photographs and detention facilities to identify likely offenders. There were lots of prisoners. But we were able to identify, in the time that we had, about 500 suspects. it was interesting when we conducted a random sample of detainees, asking them would they prefer to be tried by a U.S. military tribunal or their own Sharia Islamic court. Guess what they said? They wanted the U.S., which speaks a lot for the respect that our system of laws has in comparison to other countries. Now, when the MPs finally were ordered to turn the prisoners over to Saudi Arabia, we learned many of them were repatriated back to Iraq. I never heard of any prosecutions, but then the Saudis are not always the most scrupulous followers of what we define as due process, so maybe they doled out their own form of justice. Now, you're enjoying your lunch, so I'll not go into too much detail about the atrocities, but we did uncover ample proof. The Iraqi army divided Kuwait City into precincts, each with a military precinct captain. They basically had carte blanche to have their own way with residents, and they were both ruthless and efficient. Thefts and beatings were the least of it. A frequent tactic was to come to a home with a military-aged male, bring him outside, and execute him in the presence of the family, leaving the body on the front porch. Women and children could be kidnapped and abused with impunity. It's like the mafia took over the city and had absolute control over the life and death of the citizens. Now, the Iraqis weren't as good record keepers as the Nazis, but they did like to keep official copies of orders. We found several that were incriminating, and I brought one just to tell you, just to read it to you what it says, because there's more than a little irony in this. It starts out, "In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful." It's from the office of the 23rd Division to a subordinate unit. I'll read the letter to you. It's a little bit clumsy in the translation, but you'll get the gist. The letter from Gulf Command Headquarters, extremely secret and personal, in reference to the Security Committee meeting in Kuwait City, related to the graffiti on the walls that states opposition. The following has been decided. You see, during the occupation, people would write things on the wall and paint, anti-Iraq slogans. The order continues. Your division and committee should start a campaign to erase the graffiti, and in the case of finding graffiti stating opposition on the walls of one of the citizens' houses, its owner should be executed after interrogation without burning the house. Now, that's an example of the sort of things that were going on. On one of our early trips, we kept finding these Iraqi command posts. We came into one, and on the stove in a saucepan, there was what presented as human skin. These were Muslims torturing Muslims, performing medieval acts of cruelty against their Muslim brethren, I guess just because they could. It's hard to understand the inhumanity. As you know, the war was mercifully short. Our team caught a plane back with General Schwarzkopf's staff and landed at MacDill. I thought I was going home, but immediately got orders to report to the Pentagon and help write the war crimes report for the Secretary of Defense. They did put me up in the embassy suites in Pentagon City, so it wasn't hard duty. I wrote the report, returned to Sarasota, and I exchanged my old BDUs for my barely used rope. In closing, I just want to share some special memories, and I'm sure other veterans here will understand it. First is the bond that soldiers form under these conditions. To this day, I would trust my team members with my life, and I'm sure you are the folks who've shared experiences like this that were more extreme than I did, certainly feel that too. And second, for active duty service members and their family, deployment into combat operations is an ever-present possibility, but not in the reserves, at least in my era. In my era, deployment was a remote, rarely expected event on a distant horizon. When I came home from drill in January 1991, having been told I might be deployed to Kuwait, things got real fast. I was 45 years old. I had to sit down with my wife and my two kids who were in 5th and 6th grade and tell them what to expect. They knew I was in the reserves, but they never fully understood what that meant. And looking back, I don't think I prepared them for a balloon rising. My point is, we should celebrate and honor the families and the impact military service has on their lives. They sacrifice too in many different ways. And mine, I'm going to give you an example. It's not at all comparable to what active duty folks have to do. But when I got activated, of course you have the normal anxiety that you expect with deployment. But my income was cut nearly in half, and I had never planned on that, so my wife had to make do with a lot less and make loans to make ends meet. Thankfully, the Florida legislature passed a bill making up the difference, but things were tight for her until that kicked in. Also, half of the parent team was missing, and I was a major player in my children's life, complicating her life in unexpected ways. I want to say here, too, that Gilbert's father was chief judge when I was mobilized. Now, he was a World War II vet, was in Normandy around D-Day, and was especially supportive and understanding about what I had and my family were going through. And so I've always appreciated that. He wrote me a very nice note when I was overseas, very encouraging and supportive of the mission. So it's always great to have the support of veterans. I want to close with this. All of us, whether we're veterans or not, we got skin in this game. It's comforting when people see you're a vet and say, thank you for your service. I like to say, thank you for paying your taxes and supporting the military. With you, with all of us, we can keep our country safe. So, the only thing I want to add is when I was sat down to have my lunch, I picked up the K-Kid brochure, and they said it better than I can. This kid, whoever she is, she says, I'll leave this with you. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for saving lives. Thank you for sacrificing your lives for others. Thank you for helping our country. Thank you for doing your best for others. Thank you, veterans.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Judge. That was great. The judge alluded to this in his closing. We have a lot of veterans here and a lot of people that supported those veterans while they were veterans. You are going to be recognized now, and you may end up having to stand more than once. We don't get enough cardio anyway in our age. So my duty today is to help you stay physically fit as we support you. You deserve this recognition. We're very lucky that we have some people here that go back a bit from me. Do we have any members that are here today that served in World War II? Any World War II veterans here with us today? They're going so fast. Right here? Wonderful. Thank you, sir. We're so happy you're here with us today. I know there's got to be a bunch here. Members who served in Korea, please stand and let us recognize you. Great. Thank you, sir. Any of my friends here from the Vietnam era, please stand. Let us recognize you. Great. Thank you very much, brothers in arms. And now our most recent conflicts, the Gulf Wars. Any veterans here from our Gulf Wars? Thank you all. Please be seated. Once again, we're thankful to METV for the following salute that each of the branches of service will be recognized and making that available for us. You're going to hear the military hymn for each branch of service. When you hear your song, please stand proudly. METV, please. Thank you, METV, for that. We don't have the music for these two branches of service, but we do want to honor them just as well. If there are any members of our newest branch of the military, anyone from the U.S. Space Force with us today? Going to have to get that flag. Add that to the budget, will you, please? And anyone who has served with the U.S. Maritime Service. All right. And a group that should never be forgotten, regardless of the branch of service you served in, are women who served in the military. Separate from whatever branch, there are women that served. Thank you. The recognition of recipients of the Purple Heart. Lee Washington will present a presentation.
The Purple Heart. The award known as the Purple Heart has a history that reaches back to the waning days of the American Revolution. The Continental Congress had forbidden General George Washington from granting commissions and promotion in rank to recognize merit. Yet Washington wanted to honor merit, particularly among the enlisted soldiers. On August 7th of 1782, his general orders established the badge of military merit, and it read, "The general ever desires to cherish virtuous ambition in his soldiers, as well as to foster and encourage every species of military merit, directs whenever any singularly meritorious action is performed. The author of it shall be permitted to wear his facings over his left breast, the figure of a heart in purple cloth or silk edged with narrow lace and/or binding. This award was open only to the enlisted men, privates, corporals, and sergeants, and granted them the distinction of being permitted to pass all guards and sentinels, as could commissioned officers. The names of the recipients were to have been kept in a book of merit, which has never been recovered. At the present time, there are 3 verified recipients of the Badge of Military Merit: Sergeant Elijah Churchill, 2nd Continental Dragoons; Sergeant William Brown, 5th Connecticut Continental Line Infantry; and Sergeant Daniel Bissell, 2nd Connecticut Continental Line Infantry. Washington stated that the award was to be a permanent one, but once the Revolution ended, the Badge of Military Merit was all but forgotten until the 20th century. General John J. Pershing suggested a need for an award for merit in 1918, but it was not until 1932 that the modern Purple Heart was created in recognition of Washington's ideals and for the bicentennial of his birth. General Order Number 3 announced the establishment of the award, and it read, "By order of the President of the United States, the Purple Heart, established by General George Washington at Newburgh, August 7th of 1782, during the War of the Revolution, is hereby revived out of respect of his memory and military achievements. By order of the Secretary of War, signed Douglas MacArthur, General, Chief of Staff." On May 28, 1932, 136 World War I veterans were conferred their Purple Hearts at Temple Hill in New Windsor, New York. Temple Hill was the final encampment of the Continental Army in the winter of 1782 to 1783. Today, the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor continues the tradition begun on these grounds in 1932 of honoring those who have been awarded the Purple Heart. The Purple Heart has undergone many changes with respect to the criteria for being awarded. At first, the Purple Heart was exclusively awarded to Army and Army Care personnel only and could not be awarded posthumously to the next of kin. In 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt signed an executive order allowing the Navy to award the Purple Heart to sailors, Marines, and Coast Guard personnel. Also in awarding that year, the Purple Heart was made available to the posthumous awarding to any member of the armed forces killed on or after December 6th of 1941. Originally, the Purple Heart was awarded for merit. Being wounded was one type of merit. With the creation of the Legion of Merit in 1942, the award of the Purple Heart for merit became unnecessary and was therefore discontinued. Currently, the Purple Heart, per regulation, is awarded in the name of the President of the United States to any member of the Armed Forces of the United States who, while serving under competent authority in any capacity with one of the U.S. Armed Services, has been wounded, killed, or has died after being wounded by enemy action. I now ask that all recipients and/or their survivors to please stand and be recognized, remembering these service members will never be made whole again. Thank you.
The Braden and Kiwanis Club is starting its 99th year of service in Manatee County. Over the years, veterans have played an important role in both the club and their service to the community in the armed forces of the United States. Here is a video tribute of photos collected by President Smith and put together in the program by Mac Aldrich, our secretary of the club. The video you are about to see is a living history of members of Braden and Kiwanis who served in the armed forces of the U.S. over the years. We hope that over time, we will find more Kiwanis veterans and their photographs, and they will be included. Watch now as we demonstrate that veterans build a better Kiwanis, and Kiwanis builds a better Bradenton. Great job, Mac. Real quickly, we need Bob Green, the former vice chairman of the Manatee County Veterans Council, to come up. David, would you come up and present him a check? We are very proud to be able to support veterans organizations, and the Veterans Council is one of those. And we're happy that Bob could join us today for lunch.
A number of years ago at this luncheon in a prior building, I was with the Post 24 Honor Guard. I was younger then. And as we do, we might need to make a note. So I borrowed a pen from the chap at the table and put it in my pocket. At the end of the luncheon, he came over and said, "Sir, I believe you have my pen." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Sheriff." No.
In closing, 2 years ago at this luncheon, we presented each veteran with a challenge coin, the Grateful American Challenge coin that year, saying thank you for your service. Last year, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we couldn't have the luncheon, but produced a pin that notes that Braden Kiwanis supports veterans. Many of you may not have received a challenge coin before. I served in Vietnam, and that wasn't something that happened a lot then. According to the most common story, challenge coins originated during World War I, but today they're presented to active duty personnel, generally in recognition of exceptional service and good work. And these coins are now presented to veterans as a way of saying thank you for your service. Today, as you leave here, we have members of the Braden Kiwanis Club that will meet you in the foyer and give you a new challenge coin that we prepared for this year's luncheon. As you're given your challenge coin, please know that it comes from each of us with a grateful heart and our thanks for your service, regardless of when you served or where. We're going to close in just a moment with an incredible song by the lady that sang our national anthem. Lori, please come and sing God Bless America.
Thank you for this honor. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we lift our voices to this solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless
Thank you, everyone, for being here to honor our veterans. We'll see you next year. We do this every week for somebody. Next week is Farm City Week for those that'll be here. Thank you again. We appreciate all of you, and we appreciate all the veterans. And we will be adjourned at this time. Thank you.